welcome to Teen Time. I'm Lorie and I'm the teen librarian at Manlius Library, and today we're going to make DIY beach glass. It's a little different than stained glass. It has more of a frosted look. So here's what we're going to need to make today's project. Glue, school glue, Elmer's or any generic brand, a bottle of white school glue. Food coloring, I'm using gel food colors, but any food coloring that you have will work. Something to mix your glue and your food color in. I'm using clear plastic throwaway cups, but you can use a muffin tin or anything that will keep the color separated. Ask your parents before you use their muffin tins. Water. You're going to need this both to wash your brushes in and also to add a little bit to your mixture so it's a little bit more thin. I like to use mason jars to keep my art water in because it has a top so it won't spill, and it's also a very sturdy base so it won't spill. Can you tell I spill? Brushes. Any kind of brushes that you have will work. Something to paint on. You want something glass. Clear plastic will work as well. I'm using an old vase and also an old mason jar. You're also going to want a spoon to put water into the mixture with, not to stir it with, just to add the water. You also want something disposable that you can use to stir. I'm using takeout chopsticks, but anything will do. Toothpicks even. And lastly, you always probably want a cloth to clean up spills and some newspaper to cover the workspace so that you don't get whatever you're working with all over where you're working. Okay? So gather your materials, meet me back here, and we will make some beach glass. Okay, welcome back. We've gathered all of our supplies. We've protected our workspace. We're ready to make some paint. We're going to start with the glue. And you want to add a couple of glugs of white school glue, a tablespoon or so. I'm making pink, yellow, which I think is probably going to come out a little more orange, blue, and green. We'll start with the pink. You really only, want to add a little. I'm using gel, so I'm adding one drop at a time. If you're using liquid, you can add probably a couple of drops, and then you're going to stir it. My colors are going to look a little different than yours if you're using regular liquid food coloring because these are super concentrated. So as you can see, my pink is actually coming out a little bit more like purple. Now, it's pretty thick. So what we're going to do is add a tablespoon of water. And you want to make sure that all of your glue and your all of your glue and your food coloring and your water are mixed really well together. Now that's not very pink, so I'm going to add one more drop. This food coloring I mainly use to make buttercream frosting, which is going to be featured in an upcoming Teen Time. We're going to make cupcakes and buttercake frosting, so watch for that. Okay, still not very pink, so I'm going to add one more drop. That should do it. Very nice. It's almost a lavender color. Okay, so now we're going to move on and do the rest. A little bit for the blue. You want to make sure you keep your colors separate because they will just eventually blend into brown if you don't. Okay. We'll start with 3 drops since that's what we used for the pink. 3 drops of green. 3 drops of blue. And we'll add a little bit of water. Just a little. You don't want it too thin, but your end product is going to be pretty transparent. So you want your paint to be a little thin. Look at that blue. That is a very, very bright blue. Make sure you get all those all mixed up. There's the green. All mixed up. It's good to use the clear cups because you can see through. You can see that there's big spots of white. And then finally, the yellow, which actually is a little more yellow than I thought. It's not quite as orange as I thought it was going to be. Okay, go ahead and mix up your paints and then we'll meet back here and we'll get to decorating. Okay, we've got all of our colors mixed now. Got my pink, finally looking pink, a little bit more like red actually. Yellow, the green, the blue, and I've added in some orange because it's spring and who couldn't use a little bit of rainbow in their lives. We've got our brushes, all different sizes. Like I said, you can use whatever kind of brush that you'd like. I'm going to start with the mason jar. And now we're just painting. So you take a little bit of the paint on your brush and you paint. It is not going to look real thick. And you don't really want it to, because the point of this is for them to look like sea glass, which is kind of like frosted glass. So that when they dry, and the glue of course dries clear, even though it's white, it's going to look not as see-through as stained glass, but it's going to look like you found it on the beach. So you want to do this and keep an eye out for any bubbles. As you can see, bubbles do appear and you can just paint over them. Okay. Unlike other paint, this has glue in it, as you know, because you just made it. So you can't just rinse a brush off and go into the next color. You're going to need a brush for each color. Also be aware that because this is made with food coloring, unlike regular acrylic paints and even watercolors, this will stain. This will stain not only your clothes, but your fingers. And it won't come out. It won't come out of your clothes. It won't come off your hand. Well, it will eventually will come off your hands, but it won't come off your hands quickly or easily. Okay? So paint around. Let it set. Go back over. Touch up any spots that might have air bubbles. Oop. Actually, yeah, let's do a little bit of yellow around the top of this. And you just keep painting. You can blend them in together. You can leave some spots a little thicker than others. For the true beach glass look, you do want it to be fairly even around. But if you're anything like me, you like to experiment. As they dry, they'll become more translucent, slightly see-through. So even though that looked red, it is coming off on the glass pink. And remember, because we used school glue, it will dry clear. So that'll help it to become even more see-through as it dries. These can be used for anything. This will make a pretty vase. When it's dry, the mason jar will make a beautiful water container for your artwork. As I said, I like to use mason jars. They're sturdy. They're less likely to tip over than paper cups, plastic cups. They're reusable. And if you put a top on them, they're even less likely to spill. So there's the vase. Let's finish up. You can see on the mason jar how some of the blue has bubbled and separated. So we'll just touch that up. Easy peasy lemon squeezy. I think blue and green need some yellow. If you make your paints in little closable containers, you can keep them. These won't be able to be saved because I did them in disposable cups. But if you have baby food jars or little bitty mason jar type containers, or even little takeout salad dressing cups with the covers, as long as you can put a cover on it and keep it sealed, you can reuse it. The glue in the paint will make it dry out even faster. I'm just going to add another little touch of green to this. And there we have our sea glass mason jar. Now once it's dry, you can touch up around the places where you had to hold it. And if you want to dry it even faster, you can use a hair dryer. This one you can see is starting to dry, and you're starting to get that sea glass, frosted glass look, especially around the orange. And like I said, you can use these for all different things. You can use them to store your paintbrushes in. Like so. You could use it to keep your water in. You could use it as a votive. You could drop a candle in there and light it. I would recommend the battery operated ones if you want to do that. All kinds of things you can do with this. All right, we're going to clean up the workstation here, and I'll be back in just a minute to tell you about what's coming up. I added a little squirt of dish soap to our water jar now that we're all done painting. And you want to kind of get all the paint off each brush. Put it in there. It'll get nice and sudsy. Put some soap in there. They will come clean. It just takes a little bit more elbow grease. Let's set these out of the way so I'm not putting other paintbrushes back in them. It just takes a little bit more elbow grease than it does to clean regular acrylic or watercolor brushes. So get this started. And a good run under some warm sudsy water, and your brushes will be good as new. If you don't get these clean right away though, the glue will start to harden and you won't be able to use them again. So you've got them started in sudsy water. And we'll set that aside for a minute. I did go ahead and used my hair dryer on this one, and you can see that it's kind of see-through. It's fairly translucent. Some of the spots, especially in the orange, I didn't take my time with, and they're a little thicker, and they're going to not be quite as clear, but even when those dry, even they will still be clear. So that is DIY beach glass. This one will look the same once it dries. You can see I've got some drips going on down here. You do want to kind of watch out for that. That's why we have newspaper down. Well, that's it for today. Thank you for joining me for Teen Time. Again, I'm Lorie, and I'm the teen librarian at Manlius Library. You can find me here every Thursday at the Manlius Library channel on YouTube. Next week, we'll be making DIY spa supplies. We're going to make bath salts, hand and foot scrub, and a sugar lip scrub that's just delicious. You can always find me at www.manliuslibrary.org. Teen Services at Manlius Library has a new blog, manliuslibraryteens.wordpress.com. You can find book reviews, book lists, other activities to do, and some really great digital escape adventures. Not escape rooms, but escape adventures. And if you have any suggestions, questions, pictures of the work that you did today, send those to me at lfinger@manliuslibrary.org, or post them on your own social media and hashtag Manlius Library Teens. Thank you very much for joining me. I hope we'll see you next week.